Good afternoon, John.
Good afternoon, Bob. I'll get started here in a couple minutes. So we got people shuffling in. All right, well, welcome everybody. This is WISEdata Finance and People Count Membership, PI 1563 presentation. I'm John Robb on the WISEdata Collections team and joined by Bob Soldner of the School Financial Services team. Bob's going to take us through the first part of the presentation on WISEdata Finance, and then I'll be giving an update on a project that we are in process of working on for a pilot phase in 22-23, the People Count membership. So turn it over to you, Bob.
All right, thanks, John. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, I'm Bob Soldner. I'm on the School Financial Services team. And the WISEdata Finance project is the culmination of many years, 10 plus years of work by the finance team and collections team and their predecessors here at DPI. So WISEdata Finance was really the natural progression of financial reporting that the department and the finance team started about 18 years ago when they first created something called Sapphire, which is the state aid finance reporting portal, which is a reporting portal completely separate from WISEdata. And the WISEdata Finance portal has been developed with the collections team and the school financial services team. Dan Bush had led that project for several years at the department. Dan is no longer with the department, so I'm filling in temporarily as we rebuild the team. We recently hired Matt Byer, and Matt's going to be an integral part of the continuation of the work that we have going with WISEdata Finance. But a little bit about where we are today. The PI 1504 budget was the budget reports LEA, school districts specifically, submitted to the department. The 2021 budget was the last budget report submitted through Sapphire. And beginning in 21-22, we have all but just about 30 districts that have submitted 21-22 budget information to the department through the WISEdata Finance portal. So the portal's up and it is working for almost all of our districts. We're working with the last couple of dozen districts to get their budget information in. We had planned to retire the actual reporting of financial information after the 2021 school year, but we are revising that implementation schedule really for two purposes. One, to allow us at DPI, the School Financial Services team, really to regroup and kind of relook at the magnitude of the project. And we determined we needed a little bit more time, and working with school districts, LEAs, we realized that the LEAs would benefit from the ability to validate the numbers they push through Sapphire to match them up with what they're seeing in the WISEdata Finance portal. And so we are going to run a parallel reporting system for actual information for 21-22. And then our plan will be to develop over the next year the continued little work in WISEdata Finance and more on WISFIP in terms of the new portal that we're going to be using. So a little bit about the background that I've already talked about. In 2016, DPI undertook a change in how we collected student information from school district. It used to be ISIS was the system, and that had replaced several systems before, but we made the move to WISEdata, and specifically the Student Information System, the SIS, under WISEdata. And so then in 2022, as I've said, we started doing the same with the budget information from Sapphire, the current online reporting system managed by the finance team, to WISEdata Finance, which is a huge step forward in terms of many aspects. And so what exactly is WISEdata Finance? It's an extension of the EdFi API for robust financial data collection. Talk a little bit more about what EdFi means in the next couple of slides. But what it is, it's a new financial reporting system that we're going to expand to include all LEAs. And what that means are not only are districts going to submit financial information through WISEdata Finance, but so are the independently authorized charter schools that have a LEA status under federal and state law. So what is WISEdata Finance? It is financial information sent directly to DPI via a set EdFi API standards, which is really code behind the report, directly from the district's financial system, just as the SIS, or the Student Information System, is sent to us today from school districts and LEAs. So why did we go to WISEdata Finance? Really, it's to move away from what is in essence a manual reporting system that Sapphire is. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means, but this will allow better consistency, not only for DPI and with DPI and local accounts, that folks are going to be able to match and see side by side real time. It's going to improve the accuracy of the financial information submitted by the LEAs, and it'll actually make reporting and compliance with federal and state reporting much easier for districts. Okay, so this is, I won't take any credit for these cool graphics. This is from John and the collections team and the IT division. It's really confusing, but the important thing is think of really three pieces happening. And first, it's the EdFi credentials. And EdFi credentials, think of it as code behind the programs you're viewing that is consistent across states and consistent across vendors. And we did, as I said, back in 6 years ago, we did student information, and financial information was existing at the time in terms of the EdFi standards. But we, as a state, DPI, wasn't quite there yet, and so we began the transition over, and as I said, we've already built the system. So there's EdFi credentials matched by a woofer or chart of accounts that districts use to enter their information, account for their information locally. And so what the EdFi standards and WISEdata allows us to do is a district will account for their financial records as they have for 20 plus years on financial software in the district. Under our old system, the districts would then take that information and load Sapphire, which, think of a strip file, think of a fill-enabled form on the web, and we would then do a series of internal, after the fact, edits and errors that the district would clear, correct that report, but then not be required to collect the base financial ledger information. So WISEdata Finance has validations. We call them L2 validations, just like they are in the SIS, and they clean the data. They give the districts error report, and they can fix those errors, and they fix those errors by cleaning up their financial ledgers. Then that information is pushed to the department through the L2 validations, and we collect it in our Finance ODS, a database system that we then take, and we can take snapshots, we can have views, and we'll use that information not only for federal reporting, but our use as an agency to run state aids, calculate districts' revenue limits, bring historical information. And so the snapshot and the views really is the work we want to do this next fiscal year, working with LEAs to get that information at a spot where we're providing the views and the uses that districts need in addition to what we need. So here's another graphic in terms of WISEdata Finance and EdFi API. So it's really an accounting system that's available from DPI via the API. So DPI's job is to set the chart of accounts, which for those of you that have any knowledge of it, it's all about fund, function, and object for expenditures, source for revenue, and then more detail comes at the project level, which is more detail and more accounting. And it's part of an accounting system that allows us to collect the information we need for federal reporting and state requirements. And so once we set that chart of accounts and tie it to the EdFi API model, districts then take that information and they keep their financial ledgers, both budget information and actual information. And so daily, their systems just push information to us through the validation system, the data validations, into our finance data ODS database, where they can view then errors and clean them up. And we can see the errors that are happening and assist districts if they have any questions. So what does it mean for districts? It means their financial ledger, those local books, are going to be consistent, not only with our WOFR accounting and the DPI reports, but it's going to it'll help districts be more consistent and fix on a permanent basis moving forward any of the L2 validations. Right now in our current system, it's best practice once a district corrects their errors in our Sapphire reports to go back and correct their local accounts and how they account for that those dollars and those revenues, but it's not required. This new system will require districts to clean up their local accounts and account for the expenditures and revenues real time to collect the errors, to correct the errors, which will then save the district time in the long run and give them much more accurate information day to day, and then as the school year goes forward. So a little bit about the help. Right now, Every Student Succeeds Act, districts have been reporting school level report information. It's the district's LEAs, not just districts, the independent charter schools, responsibility, a federal responsibility to receive federal dollars on reporting both federal and non-federal expenditures by school building. And that's a report that's done manually for the most part, with a check at the end against our Sapphire annual reports. So districts report the information. Our responsibility is to collect that and send it to the U.S. Department of Education. So districts report to us, we get that information and report to the United States Department of Ed. And so the school level reporting is a big deal and is an important deal. And that it gives districts the opportunity for financial transparency of how they allocate their resources on a per student basis, not only for district decisions, but for the community to see. And then the idea is they use this data to note schools where they may have some inconsistent resource allocations. The idea to improve fairness and provide more equity for all their kids. And so part of our eventual move a year from now will be to remove the manual submission of the school level report based off static reports that the district has, and instead collect it and allow the districts to push that information straight off their financial ledgers into a view or a report to meet that school level reporting. So the big news that we're starting to share to people today, and will over the next several weeks, is that for 21-22, actual financial data reporting is going to be a parallel submission. Districts are going to be, for the first time, pushing actual 21-22 information through WISEdata Finance, that is outside a test environment, outside a voluntary basis. In addition, we're going to keep or turn on, leave on our Sapphire reports. And so as we see the Sapphire reports, which have decades of built-in errors and internal validations, we'll use those Sapphire reports to make sure we have a WISEdata Finance system appropriately with validations. Plus, we'll use that information to further develop WISFIP information in terms of the views and new reports that will be based off that WISEdata Finance. All right, so we can take a little bit of a breather if there's questions now before we jump into John's side of pupil count membership. I think would be a good time to take a little bit of a breather. So any questions? Nice. Matt Byer and Paul Spyrick and the rest of the finance team is going to be very happy to hear they don't have any work. Follow up on any questions. All right. John, I'll stop sharing and you can grab.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks, Bob.
Sure.
All right, so again, what I'm going to cover here is the pupil count membership project that the collections team has been, the WISEdata collections team has been working with school financial services team on. You know, this is a massive project, and you know, we heard for so many school years, you know, as we were implementing the WISEdata student side, that you know, people would comment and say, you know, could you do the same thing for the membership, because so much of the data overlaps, and you know, to a degree, not all of it. And also, you do, as we've heard through our analysis, a lot of times it's the same people in the district, a lot of times, that are filling out the 1563 as well as doing the WISEdata student accountability reporting. So we've had quite a bit of interesting findings as we've gone through this. So again, to reiterate, this is a pilot project in 22-23. We still have work to do to define what that means specifically, but at a high level, we're going to want to have every SIS vendor, public SIS vendor that supports public LEAs, to be part of this pilot, even if it's only one LEA for representing that particular SIS vendor. We want to make sure that we have everything covered as much as possible. So now, to clarify, the official PI 1563 report is still going to be collected via the Sapphire portal in 22-23. This is a parallel test, and is what it is. So here's some information that you know, should be encouraging to the LEAs on the call. We have a set of LEA advisors. Madison's on there, Green Bay, Milwaukee, Kakana. I believe we've had Racine on some of the calls, and others. And it may grow, but they're helping guide our design. They're giving us feedback, and ultimately, you know, this is a group where we want them to perform the parallel test. And what that'll mean is their production data that they are parallel testing, because without having their data, they can't really see, you know, the issues as easily. You know, that's going to be a key part of this. We can test quite a bit on our end, but you don't expose some of those edge cases. and you may not get the feedback you want and the initial product that we want once we go fully operational. So this parallel test, this phase, is going to be one of the most important parts of this project. So key features that we plan for what we would call a minimum viable product, an initial pilot release, is a big part of that is the WISEdata pipeline integration. So we want to leverage data from the SIS vendors that already push to the API, the WISEdata API today. We have a lot of information on the students, but we also need to get additional data properties in that we've defined and we already have in specifications that we will be giving to the vendors and actually have already sent out to them, that we need to do calculations, as well as be able to correctly categorize the students into the right buckets inside the PI 1563. Now, additionally, that part of it, we also have to create this connection over to the new pupil count application that we're building. And I'll show you some screenshots of that here momentarily. The majority of the aggregate counts that districts have to enter today into the PI 1563, those are going to get pre-populated. And even though you see a pre-populated number for a category, say, grades 1 through 12, 1,000 students, that's going to be an active link, that 1,000. That allows you to drill down and actually get the student detail information. Another key thing that we heard during analysis and feedback, our LEAs want to be able to look at the data in a staged environment or a preview before they commit it to their pupil count. I'm going to call it current data. A few reasons for this. If they're close to a snapshot and they feel good about their data already that's in pupil count current, they may not want to push any further changes in. Additionally, they want to safeguard against a student information system software issue or a process issue inside the district where a bunch of changes are made at the last minute and the data's always flowing, and they don't want that to impact the current state of their membership report that they already have checked and feel good about. So this is a gate, if you want to think of it that way, that allows review and further submission downstream. This next piece is critical. We heard this major pain point as we interviewed the districts, but we need to be able to connect the open enrollment system to the pupil count membership application. The anchor to that is that we have to have WISE IDs on the students near real time in both systems. So if we want to do some cross checks and validations around open enrollment, we have to have that WISE ID in OPAL. So this is a key piece. Another team in the agency is working on that. We'll be able to really leverage that, and I think we'll just be scratching the surface of the possibilities there. So this is the data flow, very high level. SIS, integrated data elements in the SIS, as well as new data elements in the SIS that we need to get for this particular data collection. Once it hits WISEdata, via the API, we have new calculations for determining count inclusion on the membership side. We have a count inclusion calculation that we already have for student accountability. So we do have some new calculations. And then again, that categorization of which category bucket does the student go into, or which program does that student go into. And then inside the pupil count 1563 app, again, data staged, it's previewed, and then the LEA user controls the publishing of that to become current. Now, and I'll show you a screen in a minute, we do have data that is not in the SIS, therefore not in WISEdata Portal. And I'd say that's the minority of the data that we're collecting for this collection. And those will have to be entered manually, and I'll show you. So we had to accommodate for that particular set of cases. So this is the home screen, very raw. Really, it's just built right now. I even wasn't sure if I wanted to show this, but I wanted to give you an idea of the overall flow we're shooting for. What I envision, and I think the team envisions on this home screen, and based on the LEA advisory feedback, some point when you come into here, you have to know the current state. Maybe there's metrics, graphics, maybe some counts that underlie that. But ultimately, hey, where am I at on TFS? Where am I at on second Friday, January? But then I also want to be able to preview that stage data. I may want to drill in to see what the current data looks like. So it's not just a matter of what this home screen ends up looking like, it's also the navigation and the flow as you interact with the application. We have a ways to go on that. Nonetheless, let's walk through this. So this would be a drill down for current data. So we can, create a grid structure. You can export it to Excel. We can add a number of columns, whatever makes sense. Each column has the ability to filter and sort. And you can see in this example, you have students here, you have the pupil count category that they've been set to, and then whether they're included as part of the third Friday, September count. And, so that's a little bit of it, just to show you that particular feature. We've got the preview screen. And again, this one's pretty raw as well. But the idea behind any preview screen is to say, hey, here's what's in current. Here's what you have staged. Here are the deltas. And you can see here, this would be some type of utility that you can drill in to say, what are the latest changes that came over from WISEdata? I want to know what's going on. So that would provide some granularity to say, oh, wait a minute, why are all these deletes coming in right now? That shouldn't happen. Maybe something was fired off at the sys level that wasn't intended. But that is a key feature. Again, more work to do there, but conceptually, that's what we're looking to provide. This is the, if you know the current pupil count application, you have the step screen, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's actually multiple pages. What we're attempting to do here is provide the high level categories. You'd have a separate screen for second Friday, Jan, and then the ability to drill into each one of these, and some UI work to do here so that these are actually drill down panels. But what we're doing here is we were originally going down the path of saying step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. Problem is, since we are pre-filling the counts, that kind of nomenclature doesn't work as well, because we were concerned if we use that same approach, you would expect step 1 to be identical to what step 1 was in the old application, and step 2, et cetera, et cetera. So working with the LEAs, doing, analysis and discussions internally, we came down to having a part 1, students I'm counting, as well as a part 2. Excuse me. So, the one thing that we're being very sensitive to is trying to get away from jargon, try to spell things out. And this may not be the final terminology, believe me, because there's some holes in that, even that wording. But that's what we're trying to work through, and that's where our LEA advisors are really helping us. So these are students you're counting. You can see resident, head count, part-time homeschooled. A lot of these are going to look familiar to you. Notice that you've got this aggregate count over here on the right. That is an active link. As I mentioned before, you click on that, And now you're seeing at least a handful of columns. And again, there may end up being more in this view, ultimately, probably an export link as well. But this is data that came over from WISEdata that came from the SIS. All right, so in current day, likely most districts have a number of spreadsheets that they're working from. And then, doing VLOOKUPs, doing summary counts, and then ultimately coming up with this number that's right here. So we're trying to build a solution that'll work for all districts, no matter the size of the district. This is part 2. Similar in regards to having the drill down capability, that doesn't change, but these are students I'm not counting. And again, categorized in a way, information icons, work to do on the wording on this, just again, to make it clear what this section is telling you. This is the area I mentioned before. So we have, again, some data that does not flow through the SIS to WISEdata. And in that case, we need a way to collect the WISE-ID or the local IDs from the SIS so that these students can be included in the count. 3-year-old program, Title I, SPED birth to 2, things that don't come through the SIS today. So this is the screen, pretty basic, the ability to enter WISE IDs, or local person IDs, common to limited, and then being able to submit that, some edit checks there to make sure you haven't already entered that. The grid refreshes as you go along. So we still have a lot of work to do. We've got a summary page that we're working on, similar to what you see following step 5 in the current system. We have the data quality validations to do. One of those big sets are the checks that we could do against Opal. That'll be fully dependent on that project to get the WISE IDs into Opal. Visual metrics, other indicators to compare current, significant, UI, UX. So UI is kind of what you see, the UX, the user experience as you go between screens, make it easy to find things. Ultimately, if we build a good system, if you've done a good job, users aren't having to look at documentation outside of the system a lot. You might have help links that take you to KBAs, but as far as searching out a document to explain what you're supposed to do, if you're having to do that a lot, then we've probably missed our mark a little bit inside the application. And sometimes you have to do that to a level, but at some point we need to add the functionality so that you don't have to do as much of the searching for answers. Full system QA, again, that pilot will be critical for comparing of Sapphire data in parallel, SIS vendor integration, development and testing, and then that pilot group determination and training. So we're far from done, tons of work to go. I think what you see next time we present this, you'll see something that looks totally different. I would expect a presentation at the conference next year. We'll be in pilot. I would imagine the UI UX is going to look a lot different. We will have already gone through iterations of changes based on pilot feedback, and definitely will look more polished at that point. All right, and that I'll stop there, and Bob and I are here to answer questions, and some other DPI folks are on as well.
I'll just say for those that have not been following the comments, some questions were raised about not only do we have to account for the traditional open enrollment application students, but also the alternative open enrollment application process. And yes, we're aware of that, and we do want to account for it. And John mentioned that, understated the open enrollment and the Opal significance, that it will be a huge piece of this that will take a ton of work off of districts' plates if we can, and we will accomplish using the SIS and the open enrollment designation and get those children into the appropriate places for school finance counting purposes, a revenue limit and aid payments. So that'll be a huge piece of this. There's many huge pieces of this, but I'm excited about this. We've been wanting to get, and I probably should have said this at the start, the school finance team does 2 independent collections outside of WISEdata right now and have had since the beginning of time. One is all the financial collection information, revenues and expenditures. But the other is the 3rd Friday, September, 2nd Friday in January, general aid membership count that the finance team collects based on state law, the different ways we pay for kids and how you, the district, is required to pay for students. And then we use that for revenue limits. And so those have been completely isolated, separate, duplicate efforts that districts have had to always do. And so this PI 1563 project is a huge one. And, we've successfully applied for federal grants to allow us to fund this. And so this is going to be a big time step forward for us. So it's a lot of work, but it is time for sure. Can I ask unrelated finance questions? Sure, you can stump me. Christy asked that. Go ahead. How do I determine between DPI grant deposits and per pupil deposits? They are not labeled. I am new to my position in the finance department at my school. Okay, so Christy, you can email me directly, but if you go onto the finance team website under aid payments, there's something called the AIDS register, and you can type in the fiscal year. In this case, it'd be 2022. Start typing in your district name, and up will come the district's name. Hit submit on that. That'll pull up what we call the AIDS register. That will list every payment by grant or state aid payment, including the per pupil amounts, and list all the appropriate woofer accounting and how you should be coding that revenue. So it's called the AIDS register. And if you're having problems, just email me and I'll send you the link and kind of step you through it. There you go. Thanks, John.
Yep.
And I should specify the age register is only for DPI generated payments. We try to help districts identify some of the additional gear, ARPA funds that the governor's office has and other state agencies have that are making payments directly to school districts. Those will not appear on your age register. The age register is only DPI generated payments. I know several districts are receiving money for unemployment claims that they're getting federal COVID pandemic dollars for. So that's just an example. So you won't see that detail. You'll have to track down the separate state agency payments yourself. But other questions? How do we get added to the PI 1563 pilot? That's a good question. We're going to be working with the vendors to identify some of the districts that they have good working relationships with. And then I can work with the team about going about identifying others. But I would say probably you can email me directly, Bob Soldner, robert.soldner@dpi.wi.gov, and I'll keep a separate list that when we put together a group to test would be a good way to do that. I can't imagine we'll turn anybody down that wants to do dual reporting and help us through. So
that's right. Absolutely.
More the merrier.
Yep. And I did see up above Anne, yeah, mentioning about the alternative open enrollment app. Yeah, and like Bob said, we're working with that team. I know there's a desire to get that off of paper and into an application. Right now, that's not in the works on the roadmap. It has been discussed. It has definitely been discussed. It's just we've got too many other projects ahead of it right now.
That's a good question. What finance reports still need to be entered in Sapphire? You've been telling us that for the past 5 years, John.
That's not fair, Ann. Come on.
So Ann, I'll finish the conversation on open enrollment. Open enrollment is a huge area for long time. I've been at the department, and I've been involved in the very early stages of even pre-Opal, when we had the Worm system. That was a private contractor that developed that. We worked on setting the parameters for that software. So, as the finance team figures out WISEdata Finance and gets WISFIP in line and in order over this next year, we also have programmers dedicated to help on WISFIP and the finance team. And so as we clear up some of their time, we're going to have some more folks to be able to help on this. This OPAL, this open enrollment piece, is a huge piece. I mean, that is the single largest group of kids that are parental choice programs in the state. So that'll be our priority, to try to get that to work as best we can. So that's going to definitely be there, right? So, okay, and then what did Ann say? I know, but when a district has demand, yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, so Ann, just so you know, when we did the analysis on the pupil count application, there's a couple things that definitely popped to the top. Getting WISE-ID and OPAL was one. Obviously, we already knew we were going to be doing the membership application for 1563, which in itself is a massive project, as well as adding to the data pipeline. And then I would say number 3 on that list of items in that analysis was definitely the alternate application, putting it into an electronic form. So it's those other things come first, but then we'll see where that when that can be accommodated. It was definitely high on the list of pain points. Absolutely, we heard the same thing. So, yeah.
Okay, so what finance reports still need to be entered in Sapphire? Everything except for the PI 1504 budget report. That's been closed. We 21-22, the PI 1504 budget didn't exist. We're not going to reopen the budget report. But all the other Sapphire reports, including the 1505 annual, the SE, the 1505 AC process, the auditor 1506 AC process, the referenda reporting, everything else, Sapphire is going to be live for 21-22. And then moving into 22-23, we're going to start working on those new version in WISFIP, right? So WISFIP is going to be the version, our portal that the finance team controls, that we'll have to build reports that we need. Think of debt schedule reporting. We're working on the tax levy report. Will be our first one that we'll pull out of the Sapphire environment and get into WISFIP. We're going to be testing that. Actually, it's ready to be viewed by the finance team. And so that'll all start happening in the 22-23 school year. But the goal being, I'd love to have it all done in a year, but I'm not going to say we're going to have it all done in a year. We want to. But the main reports, the 1505, the annual, and the SC, they're still going to be in Sapphire for sure for 22-23. Then the idea is it'll cease after that. All right. We have a few minutes remaining for more questions. So I just want to take the last couple of minutes to thank you all for being patient. Many of you know Dan Bush left the team along with 4 other folks, so we're down 5 people on a team of 20. You can feel the loss that we have. And so we are behind in some areas. We're trying to prioritize and get back to you just as soon as we can. I said at the start, Matt Beyer has now joined the finance team. Matt has an excellent reputation of a problem solver and WISE grants and many of the other hats Matt has wore over several years at the department. So Matt's diving right in to help us get our backlog taken care of and be part of the team moving forward. And my hope is over the next month or 2, we get fully staffed up, but I do appreciate the patience all of you have been showing. And I just ask you to continue to focus on the reports that are due. If any of you are part of that 30 that hasn't yet pushed WISEdata Finance in through your budget information, continue to work with your vendors and Matt on that. And once you get that done, then the 21-22 actual push into WISEdata Finance will not be a problem at all for you. So I really do appreciate everyone's patience, and I think we're making some real progress. So I'm excited. Thanks, Tessa, for that cool graphics you just sent.
It's high tech.
That is high tech.
It is high tech.
Yeah, and thanks for all the feedback for sure in the chat. Again, when I hear pain points of, giving Ian a hard time, but 300 plus alt apps, having to manually key those in, we've got to figure something out sooner than later. So, because that's across the state and better use of time, right?
Yeah.
So. All right.
All right, John. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Have a good rest of the day.
Bye now.
Thanks.